Hi everyone, this is Katie Bishop from the Center for Science and the Public Interest. You are all here to talk about the Randolph-Shepard Act and working with vendors. I'm joined today by Julie Ralston from the Public Health Law Center, as always. And today we're going to be hearing from Julie. She's going to talk about the Randolph-Shepard Act generally. And then we're going to be hearing from a vendor out of New Orleans, Pinky Harris, and we will also be hearing from Rosalind Kurita out of the health department in the state of Tennessee. So I just wanted to quickly remind everyone, as we mentioned on the last call, we did start a food service guidelines listserv. It's a great way to stay connected in between calls. If you want to share updates, questions, challenges, successes, feel free to use that. If you're not already on the listserv, then you can just shoot me an email and I will get you signed up for that. And now I'm going to turn it over to Julie. I did just want to mention I can share the slides with everybody, and we will have a question and answer period at the end. We're leaving a lot of time to have some good discussion with all of you. So take it away, Julie.
Great, thank you, Katie. And also, sorry I missed it if you mentioned it, that this is being recorded as well, right? So there will be a link afterwards if people want. Okay. So hi, everyone. I'm Julie Ralston, and I am with the Public Health Law Center. We are a nonprofit legal technical assistance center located at a law school in William Mitchell College of Law in St. Paul, Minnesota, with the mission of using the power of law to improve health. So we work with public health officials, public health advocates, researchers, and community leaders all across the United States to help develop public health laws and policies that are grounded both in good science and good law. I've been with the center for about 8 years now. I work mostly on healthy eating policy issues, including things like food marketing to kids, and of course a big part of my work is how to use policy and systems change to promote healthy food and beverage environments in hospitals, government buildings, and other public places. But I also do some work in commercial tobacco control as well. In general, we are a policy think tank. We don't represent clients and we don't lobby, but we do provide legal research and educational materials to help inform the development of policies, and we can provide strategic consulting to help communities defend public health laws when they are challenged in court. Today what I'm going to talk about is a body of research that we've been doing through some generous funding support from the Voices for Healthy Kids, which is an initiative of the American Heart Association and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And for this project, we are finishing up a 50-state review of state food purchasing processes. The goal is to give the Heart Association and Voices and its partners a snapshot of what laws shape or influence the food procurement process at the state level. And so much of the information that we are finding is going to be available on our website within the next few months. It's not available right now, but we're working on it. But today, I just want to give you a little bit of an introduction to the research, and we're going to focus specifically on the Randolph-Shepard law. So what we've looked at is the procurement laws that give priority to certain kinds of businesses, like minority or women-owned businesses, for example, is a common one, or to goods or services that are created or provided by the state corrections agency or department, and also for like locally grown food preferences, food grown within the state. And we're also looking at how food purchasing is done by the state, the key departments and the agencies involved, and to what extent, if there are any, laws that set nutrition standards for the food that is served or sold by government agencies. And I'm sure as many of you on the call are aware, there is a growing number of laws and policies in that arena. But most pertinent for today, we also did a 50-state review of the state law versions of a federal law called the Federal Randolph-Shepard Act, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. So I think probably everybody, most people on the call will be familiar with the Randolph-Shepard Act, but just in case this is a newer concept for some of you, I wanted to just give you a very high-level overview of what the law is and what it's about. It's a law that was passed first in 1936, and the goal is really to provide employment opportunities for legally blind individuals. The law provides a preference or a priority for legally blind business owners to operate vending facilities on federal property. And as I will get into more detail later on, all but 2 states in the United States have passed their own versions of this law, so which essentially mandate that the same priority for vending operations is applied to state property and in many cases also to some local government property as well. Now, the Randolph-Shepard law takes a broad vision of what is a vending facility. It's not just a vending machine as you might think. It covers things also like cafeterias, snack bars, snack carts, shelters, counters, and other kinds of auxiliary equipment. And the basic framework for the law is that it sets up, it requires each state to designate an agency that will be the state licensing agency, or SLA, which this is the agency then that implements and oversees the implementation of the act within the state. It's typically the state's rehabilitation agency or the state's agency for service to the blind or a similar kind of agency. Then the Act also establishes a vending business program in each state within the state licensing agency, and this program is usually called the Business Enterprise Program, or BEP. So these are some of the common acronyms you would see in this world. So through the Business Enterprise Program, the state licensing agency provides self-employment opportunities for qualified, legally blind individuals, provides training and support, and also then it oversees the vending permitting process. The state licensing agency is responsible then for the licensing and the placement of blind vendors eligible to operate vending facilities on the various kinds of public property within the state. And the law also has some requirements for how the program has to be implemented, and one important requirement is that there has to be a blind vendor committee who is actively involved in the administration of the program and in handling grievances and that kind of thing. Just in terms of the contracting process and how that works in the Randolph-Shepard world, and when you're thinking about where are the important documents to be aware of, there are 2 types of contracts or agreements to look at. The first is that the state licensing agency is going to have a permit or a contract with the government agency to have the vending or concession facility on the property, and then the state licensing agency will also have agreements with the individual vendors who are operating those vending or concession operations on the property. And I know, practically speaking, what I've heard is that these contracts and permits, documents, even though they're public, they're government documents, they're often pretty hard to track down. And even after you go through all that work, they often don't have a lot to say, if anything, about the nutritional quality of the food that's being provided. But nonetheless, as a lawyer, I have to, urge people to try to get these documents because they might have some relevant language, and they also might have some language that's just helpful to know in terms of thinking about what your process is and how you can move forward. In terms of working with your state licensing agency or business enterprise program director, you're going to hear more about that later on here from one of our panelists. But if you haven't made a contact there yet and you want to know how to find out who it is, here the National Council of State Agencies for the Blind website has a really handy page with links to all of the directors, and you can find it at the URL there. One other thing I wanted to say about the federal law is that you can see how it provides, it makes blind vendors or Randolph-Shepard vendors and the state licensing agencies really important stakeholders in any effort to get healthy vending on public property. And one requirement I wanted to highlight for you is that the priority is a strong one, and it requires that before the state, the agency that owns or operates the property can work with a non-blind vendor, they have to get a written waiver from the state licensing agency to do so. And that if there is a vending operation that is in direct competition with a blind vendor on a government site, then some percentage of the proceeds of the revenue from that non-blind vendor site has to go towards the program or to the blind vendor. So, so these are really, important requirements to be aware of. Now I wanted to talk about the state-level blind vendor laws. I mentioned before that nearly every state has passed its own version of the Randolph-Shepard Act. We call them mini Randolph-Shepards. And so here's a map showing kind of some high-level view of our findings. As you can see, we've color-coded it so that the purple there, the only two states that do not have their own mini Randolph-Shepard Acts but simply administer the federal law and apply it to federal property in that state, North Dakota and South Dakota. But for South Dakota, there is a Department of Administration policy document that encourages blind vendors to be employed on property that is leased or owned by the executive branch. And the dark blue states are those states that apply the priority for blind vendors to both state and local government property. But it's important to kind of know that there's usually some kinds of limits or exceptions on that scope. So for example, it may only apply the preference or priority to county property but not city property, or only for city and county halls but not for other types of local government buildings. You just really have to look at the law and make sure you know the details. And then the light blue states are the states where there's the priority applies, but to state property only. And again, even in those states, even though it's only state property, there might be language in the law that is at least encouraging local governments to give priority to local vendors, to blind vendors, but not requiring it. For example, that's the case in Minnesota and California. And then also, some cities will have their own versions of these laws too, and create a preference or a priority for blind vendors on city property. So that's kind of the legal framework here that we're all operating in. And we do have this publication, which is a legal guide to the Randolph-Shepard Act. It's available on our website there at that URL. I hope you'll take a look at it. And I finally wanted to just talk about or make sure you know that there are several groups that provide support to blind vendors who are participating in the Randolph-Shepard programs. These are national advocacy organizations, state commissions for the blind, and business trade associations that offer resources and support to help blind individuals achieve economic and vocational independence as licensed RS vendors, and they provide a collective voice for their vendor members. And so as you can see or gather here, that Randolph-Shepard vendors and the groups that represent them are important and influential stakeholders here in healthy vending efforts, which is why we are so glad that Pinky Harris, who is a Randolph-Shepard vendor and who is a leader in the Randolph-Shepard Vendors of America, was able to join us today, even though she is really busy operating her own site. So I want to thank her for that. And before I move on to introducing her, I just wanted to say a few words about something that I think is really important just to lay out for all on the call today. That, of course, all of us who are here on the call today, I think, agree that healthy vending is important and possible. But I think it's important to acknowledge that we are likely to disagree on the best way to achieve these goals in a systematic way. I've heard Randolph-Shepard vendors and trade organizations, and like other food industry groups as well, argue that policies and mandates are not desirable and not the best way to go. These organizations are understandably wary of laws or policies that they are concerned could keep vendors from fully benefiting from the Randolph-Shepard program. And of course, I know many others on the call today and who are doing the work in this area will really believe that policies are necessary to make real progress in establishing these healthy food and beverage environments, and that vendors, haven't done it on their own so far, and so policies are needed. But at the same time, I also think that this same group, it would agree that we don't, the goal is not to create more burdens or disadvantages for anyone, especially a group that is historically and continues to be economically disadvantaged, because that is also not a pro-public health approach. So I know we will all have to agree to disagree perhaps on what is the best route for these goals, but I think it's really important and helpful to keep in mind that we do have a lot of shared goals and values across these groups, and that's why we really wanted to focus on this topic for this call. So thank you for listening, and I'll be happy to take questions later. Right now, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Pinky Harris, and just she is, as I said, she is a Randolph Sheppard vendor. She is also the author of a white paper that was circulated to the group yesterday called Misinformation Shaping Public Policy, Healthy Vending, and the Randolph Sheppard Program. Ms. Harris is a vendor who she lives in New Orleans and Louisiana, a great food city. She is a sous chef, has been working as a chef and in this industry since 2001. She has her an operation now in the New Orleans Criminal Court building. I'm really hoping that someday I will have the opportunity to visit her there. She's got an amazing menu. If you want to take a look at it at pinkyharris.com, you can find it there. And so, Pinky, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Everyone can hear me? Okay. I'm desperately looking for a quiet spot in my building to talk to you guys. I'm having no luck. So I'm sorry about the background noise, but that's about the best I can do. Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction. I just wanted to say thank you for including me in on the call. And before I received my stand, I was very active in the advocacy of healthy vending within the Randolph Sheppard program. I've attended many national conferences with the program, and I have to tell you, so far it seems like, you know, healthy vending is viewed as the big bad wolf that's coming to put us all out of business, and that, you know, mandates are being put together to squelch us all out of business and, you know, continue to, you know, put a thumb on the blind man, as it were, viewed. But I have to tell you that I have seen a change in the paradigm recently since the paper was published. You know, the view of Randolph Sheppard Vendors of America is that, you know, yes, we do not support mandates, and we feel that, you know, if there was a more cooperative attitude amongst the Randolph Sheppard vendors themselves, that there would be no need for mandates. I really believe in my heart that the reason that mandates are being pushed so hard right now is because of the negativity and lack of cooperation with the Randolph Sheppard vendors. I mean, if you're trying to get healthy vending into a building and your vendor is uncooperative, well, of course, the only way to get what you need is to force them to do it. I will say that since I have been in the Randolph Sheppard program, I have noticed that, you know, blind vendors in general, if they feel like rules are being forced on them, they tend to be less cooperative than if something is their own idea and of their own volition. So I think that's where I personally came to the realization that if there was greater cooperation, there would be less need for mandates. Like I said, I have seen a shift in the paradigm recently. Both trade organizations have come out publicly in support of healthy vending now, and I think that there's finally a realization that, you know, this is not going away. Healthy vending is not going anywhere. The trend for people who want to eat healthier is not going anywhere, and as I included in the paper and was very astonished to learn myself, in the vending industry as a whole, health foods and non-carbonated drinks are the highest growth potential in the market right now. So as entrepreneurs, it would only behoove us to join the trend, as it were, and get on the bandwagon and sell the products that are moving the fastest in the market. As for my own location, when I took over, it was nothing but fried foods and concession stand items, hot dogs, hamburgers. There were salads, but, you know, iceberg and shredded lettuce was about all you got on them, and some bacon. So I am, like other Randolph Sheppard vendors, actually stuck in the same boat, having problems with distribution of healthy items in my area. So I am currently actively looking for distributors where I can get the healthy products from. But as for my snack bar, I have definitely done away with all of the fried foods and have implemented healthier lunch meats and like many sources of salad on, like, not iceberg either, but spinach salad spring mix and loaded with vegetables and superfoods. I have fresh fruit cups cut every day. I have yogurt parfaits, and my clientele has been very receptive to that. In fact, my sales are increasing every day. We weren't sure how it was going to go because of the complete and utter 180, as it were, menu changes. And, we still get a little bit of pushback, but overwhelmingly there's massive amounts of support from my clientele, and that makes me extremely happy. And, big burly guys are coming in going, where's the parfait? Where's the fruit? So they're loving it. And I will continue to try to increase my percentages in my vending machines for healthy items and see where it goes from there. So does anyone have any questions for me, or are we going to do the questions all at the end?
We can do all of the questions at the end. If people
okay.
Do have questions that they're thinking of right now, they can go ahead and type them into the question and answer box, and I will be sure to ask those at the end.
Okay,
so thank you so much, Pinky. We will hear from you in a little bit.
Thank you for including me.
Oh, no problem. And everyone looking at the slide here, we have links to both the white paper that Pinky wrote. So if you didn't get an email with that attached to it, there's a link on here so you could read that. And then there's also a link to an article that was in Vending Times that showcased a session that was at the Randolph Shepherd Vendors of America conference that talks about Pinky's work as well. So now we are going to go ahead and hear from Rosalind Kurita. So I have been talking with Rosalind for a few years now. She is a health policy advisor at the Tennessee Department of Health. We actually were able to catch her just a couple of days before she is retiring, so we're very lucky to be able to hear from her and her experience in Tennessee. And she's going to talk about the other two folks that are up. Their contact information is up on the slide here, but those are the people who you could reach out to going forward. So thank you so much for being on the call, Rosalind, and we're excited to hear what you have to say.
Thank you very much. Really, this is a pleasure to be able to be involved in this. First, I wanted to say, Pinky, I think you did a very nice job on this research work, and I wish I had had this several years ago. It really is a very complete and multidimensional look at issues and problems. In Tennessee, we have made some real progress, and I think the way that I would like to approach this, because I know throughout the last few years, several people have called and said, well, how are y'all doing this? And, we try to exchange information with each other. I think I want to just start by telling you that in Tennessee, we were very fortunate to have an executive order. And for those of you who do not have an executive order, I would encourage you to try to get an executive order. But I want to back up from that. How did that happen? I am at the Department of Health, and my guess is that most of the people on this call are with the Department of Health. The real reason that we were able to get an executive order doesn't have anything to do with, well, it loosely has something to do with health, but the real motivator is the cost of insurance in your state. Most of us have some kind of a retirement system and some kind of an insurance system for state employees. And that, of course, is affiliated with finance and administration. I know we all have different names for our government department, but finance and administration oversees the benefits program. Benefits is obviously benefits, pays for insurance. there is the motivation. You want to bring down the cost of insurance to your state. And so my suggestion to you is that needs to be an integral part of your team. I am very fortunate in that I am a direct report to the Commissioner of Health, and that is clearly very helpful. Having a team that is made up not only of Department of Health folks, but also benefits folks, and crucially, the Department of Human Services is how we name them in Tennessee, but it is the department that handles what would be the blind services. And we in Tennessee refer to our organization as Tennessee Business Enterprise. And I would say to you that it is critical that you have an executive director for your blind services, and that's a state employee person who is willing to listen and willing to expand the vendors' resources and training. And that's a big piece of this, and I think that Pinky pointed it out well in her paper. You know, folks who have been doing things one way for many years are not going to have any interest in changing the way they do business, especially if they're afraid that they are going to lose money. And that's pretty much the crux of why we get resistance. So I think it's very important that Department of Health and Department of Human Services and FNA have a relationship and a team, and this has to be pretty high level because there has to be a clear coordination and that it's important to everyone. So I hope that is helpful. Sometimes we try to work just in our own department, and I know in state government we tend to, all of us have silos of what we do. This is definitely one of those where you need to reach out. We had, at first, great resistance from the blind vendors, and I noticed, Pinky, in your paper that you quoted some folks that were Tennessean, but we now have a real team effort, and we have adapted NANA standards. 30% of the products in our vending machines are NANA products. We meet pretty much quarterly, and one of the big humps in this was getting data. It just was all over the place, and you know, each one of the units, each blind vendor has their own contract, and people didn't even know how to communicate with a vendor in order to ask them to sell something healthier in their vending machine. So we did a combination of one, a survey that was statewide to all state employees, and we had the Department of Human Services actually conducted it. We helped put questions together, and so we could prove overwhelmingly that there was a market for healthier foods. And you know, if we're going to ask blind vendors to change the way they do things, we have to be willing to help them. And so at the Department of Health, we send out statewide emails to all state employees that say things like, have you tried this particular product? It's new, it's healthy, so that we can encourage folks to see that there are healthier items in the machine, and that helps our blind vendors to be able to sell these things and move these products. And the most recent thing we're trying is some flyers that have pictures of products that meet NANA standards, and the vendors can pass those out and put them on machines. And as we all know, General Services gets mad at you when you stick things on the wall, but sometimes we just do it. So that I think that I've covered the things that I wanted to really mention. Involve DHS at a high level, try to expand the resources so that our vendors can actually be able to purchase the items that they want and need, and make sure that we have data. So as we all know in state government, data is what moves the needle or helps us to be able to move the needle. And that executive order, if you can get an executive order, that helps you get everybody to the table. And our executive order had guidelines that said that F&A and health and the blind vendors all had to sit down together and work this out. So I hope that's helpful. And I think, Katie, I'll turn it back to you and see if there's any questions. Oh, I did want to point out Malika Watson and Kristen Coyle are the two folks who will be at the Tennessee Department of Health, and Kristen is at F&A, and they will be, Malika will be taking my place as I go to work in my garden.
Great. Well, thank you, Rosalind. So folks that are listening in, if you have questions, type those into the question box, and I will try to get to as many of them as we can. We did want to leave a lot of time because we knew that folks would have a whole bunch of questions. So to start off the questions, Julie, one came in for you. Do you know if there are any similar laws that apply to other categories of vending? Just curious. So the person said they're just curious since it seems a little odd that it impacts just food service.
Yeah, well, yes, there are other laws that impact procurement of like how and what a government agency buys, and so some of those laws are like laws that that say that when a state is buying, you know, it can be office supplies or construction equipment, I mean any kind of or construction services, that they have to give a preference to minority-owned businesses or disadvantaged businesses. That kind of phrasing is what you see. So there are, and again, like I said, local, and there can be laws that require a preference given to products that are made in the state, you know, to support local producers, whether it's agricultural products or it could be other kinds of products as well. So, and then, you know, I've neglected to mention that the highway, you know, the highway transportation system and your rest stops, highway rest stops, there's a separate kind of system there dealing with the vending machines in those facilities, but they also grant a priority to blind vendors too for those kinds of facilities, but it's not part of the Randolph-Shepard law. I hope that answers the question. Oh, and then, sorry, other kinds of green laws, laws that promote sustainability and so, you know, require preferences or for products that are seen as green or recyclable, too.
Julie, a question that came in for Pinky. Pinky, do you have any tips for approaching Randolph-Shepard vendors who currently don't support healthy vending efforts?
In my state?
I think if you can speak generally or to folks in your state, either would be great.
That don't support it?
Yes.
I know of some. Yes. I would prefer not to give out their names, but yeah, there definitely are some that feel that the burden of changing the eating habits of America has been put on the backs of blind people, which makes me very sad.
Do you have any tips for how people could go about starting conversation with those folks?
I would definitely cite the studies that we cited in the paper and that are available, and I would definitely go down the road of cooperation first rather than, I mean, I know executive orders are great and all that, but blind vendors will fight an executive order every single time. Mandates are better, but, and I'm not speaking for myself, I'm just speaking for vendors in general. Even in my state, I see, you know, that the attitude is, oh, well, you can't make me do anything. This is my own business, and I run it however I want. So I would definitely say that the tips are definitely create an attitude of cooperation very early. I would definitely lay out, you know, yes, we do want to implement healthy vending. we could do it slowly. We could help you find distributors. I would just say that, an attitude of cooperation from the very beginning is very helpful. The blind community as a whole seems to completely balk at ideas that are forced upon them or are mandatory, or if they feel like they're kind of like cats, if they feel like they're backed into a corner. So that would definitely be my tip.
Great. Thanks, Nikki. Rosalind, a question that came in for you. You mentioned that there was a rocky start in Tennessee in working with blind vendors. How did you work through those rough patches?
Well, I think that anytime you have that kind of a situation, when you start and you're trying to do any kind of behavior change, doesn't matter who it's with, you do have to try to lay out what is the mutual goal here. And I think that it really bears repeating that blind vendors depend upon this money for their income, for their livelihood. And that is not to be understated. We care about health, and that's kind of our world. But for the blind vendors, this is their livelihood. And we had to all make sure that every one of us understood that. As I mentioned before, we had a lot of help from finance and administration, who what they care about, of course, is the cost of insurance. And when you bring all those things together, it was a balancing act, a development of trusting relationships that we each understood where the other one lived. And what we were going to try to do would enable folks to have the opportunity to purchase healthy foods, not trying to change everybody out there, making them buy something healthy. That is not it. It was to offer the opportunity to state employees to be able to purchase healthy items, in conjunction with the realization that this would not be a money-losing proposition for our vendors. And that's why the data is so critical. When you can look at every machine in every building and say, in fact, we are selling healthy items, then people understand and begin to trust each other. And so, and then that comes back to the executive order, and I understand what Pinky is saying, but I don't think we would have gotten to the table to say, okay, let's do this, let's have the opportunity for a trusting relationship without the overarching guideline and framework of an executive order. But it really is, again, developing a relationship that trusts and understands each member's motivation, because this is the livelihood of the blind vendors, and I don't think you can understate that. So the data proved and does prove in Tennessee that they are not losing money. There's a lot of things we need to do to help them. We need to make it easier for them to purchase in large groups, because as it is, these folks are going out and buying whatever they can at Sam's or wherever. And I think if I were magic, I would like to see the state, the general services, help them with procurement. We're not there yet. That would be an area that I think could be very helpful, so that our blind vendors would have assistance in being able to provide the healthier items, not lose money, and have a kind of an easier road to hoe, if you will.
Thank you. A few people have typed in asking if the slides will be available and if this webinar will be archived. The answer to both of those is yes. If you registered for this webinar, then I will send out the slides. I'll send out a link to the email, and I'll send another copy of the fact sheet that Julie mentioned earlier. A question for Julie. is, are you able to share the resources and documents that you were utilizing in your research for specific states? So when you did that 50-state scan, are there things that you could share with folks?
So, like I said, we are working on getting that. We will be working on getting that on our website in a fashion so that, because there's a lot, and I will say it's not because, so we're trying to distill it down and make it useful. And of course, we're partnering. You know, this is a project that is funded with the Heart Association and Voices. So they will also be having this information, and we're talking with them about the best way to get it out to the world. But you know, it will be available and for people to use, because that's the goal. So, sorry, I wish I could say we have it done now. We're in the process of finishing it. That's why. And sorry, I would just say if there are, specific questions too, people should feel free to call me or email, and I'm happy to do what I can.
So this is a question for Pinky. So Pinky, since you wrote the paper, do you know if there are any new results available from the Compass partnership in Oregon to get 40% fit pick products in the vending machines?
Unfortunately, I don't know. I know that there is a group of vendors in Oregon who are actively working on it. Randy Hoff is heading that movement up, and he is actually the one who is examining the data on those machines. He told me that he is doing it quarterly, and I have greatly encouraged him to call one of you guys and publish his results so that he can be included in the body of academia surrounding healthy vending. But I don't think there have been any new results since the paper was written, no.
Rosalind, a question for you. Are you willing to share your state employee survey and one of your newsletters to employees about promoting healthier foods?
I don't see a problem with that. I think that probably would be something you want to talk with Kristen Coyle about, and her contact information is on the slide. Kristen was involved in creating the original guidelines with the executive order. I don't see any kind of problem with it, but I think it's really very common sense kinds of questions. And what was the other part of it? The vending survey, and what was the other part?
An employee newsletter that you sent out.
These weren't really newsletters. It was a straight-on, blurb about a product. For example, try, and I blank on what name, but let's just say veggie sticks. Try veggie sticks. They're low in sodium, and they cost this much, and they're in every vending machine. So if he just really kind of a marketing, helping the vendor market a specific healthy item. So there's really no newsletter in terms of content. And again, it's really common sense, and you would tailor it to however you wanted to do. And that's where Department of Health, I think, was very helpful to the blind vendors. I opened the account, and Department of Health paid for it. And again, that's where it is also helpful to be a direct report to the commissioner, because you can get things like this done rather than, as we all know in state government, things take a really long time to get accomplished. But I'm sure that Kristen will be happy to share that information with you.
Thank you. I just got a message from our friend Ashley Bell. She said that folks that are interested in seeing those memos that Julie's putting together could reach out to their American Heart Association State Government Relations Director. And as soon as they're finished and the government relations directors have those, then they could send them around to people. So I have a question that could be answered by either Pinky or Rosalind. do you think that there are things that state licensing agencies could do to better support healthy vending efforts by vendors like Pinky who are interested in working on this?
I don't know who else wants to answer. My answer would be help with distribution would be wonderful. I think that's the biggest thing, deterrent and problem facing all the vendors, even myself right now, is lack of distribution of healthy products. We have actually, RSVA has partnered with Human Healthy Vending out of California, and they have access, they sell 1,200 healthy products. But the problem with the distribution is it varies wildly by geographic location and by distributors. So I would definitely say that that would be awesome if SLAs could get involved in distribution.
And I'd kind of like to follow up with what Pinky said. You know, I think that we in state government owe it to the blind vendors. If we sell healthy items, we need to help them purchase them. And in Tennessee, I know that our blind vendors, and I said this earlier, they each are on their own to procure their items.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
I think we could do better. Again, you know, if I were magic, I would like to see state government provide a warehouse where vendors would be able to purchase in bulk, and some help in distributing those items out across the state. You know, I'm in Tennessee, we're a long, skinny state, and if our vendors had help buying the product in bulk for a lower price, moving it to them, that would be huge piece. That was not an uphill battle for them.
And I'll also like to add, since the formation of the partnership with Human, they are actually trying to help with the distributorship as well. But I would also like to add that, you know, I've had vendors approach me because they know that I'm involved in the healthy vending movement and ask me, hey man, you know, I'm in a DHH property, I'm in a GSA property, and they want me to increase healthy vending. Do you know where I can get this stuff? Because, you know, like you said, a lot of vendors only are operating out of Sam's and Costco, you know, or only have one food purveyor that they can work with. So, yeah, just to reiterate, that's wonderful.
And Rosalind, we got a question. Did you provide vendors with a list of items that meet your nutrition guidelines?
Actually, what we have done, we provided everybody with NANA standards. But, you know, for the most people, you know, they look at a label and they go, oh, yeah, okay, I hope it's healthy. But what we've done that I think is unique to the Department of Health, and every one of you out there can do this, we have items that our folks want to sell, and we have within the department, everybody has a lot of registered dietitians and nutritionists, and we have software so that I can give it to folks. They can run the software, and they can say, yes, this item meets the standards, and say, yep, this is a go, yes. Now, we don't do that every time. I don't want you to think we're certainly not that order, but our vendors make an effort to provide provide the healthy things. We do have our nutrition specialists check, and 30% of our have foods that meet NANA standards. The check our registered dietitian. So it's not so much that we provide them a list. NANA on the internet, of course, you can get a list from them. It's not just the easiest thing in the world, but Katie can talk to you about that. And so that your big list will come. Katie can help you with that. But then we do have an opportunity to check items. Does that answer your question?
For everyone who's doesn't know what NANA is, NANA is the National Alliance for Nutrition and Activity, and we do have that set of guidelines up on the CSPI website, and we do have a product list that goes along with that list. So if folks are interested in that, I can send that out in the follow-up email as well. Pinky, I got 2 questions that are sort of similar, and they're wondering about how you started selling the healthier options. So did you do any polling or promotions, or did you just sort of, or did you pilot things, or did you just jump into offering healthier options?
Is this directed at me?
Yes.
Okay. I jumped straight into it. I was lucky in that, you know, I was taking over a location. So I just pulled out the fryer and am not using the flat top grill, and started putting out fruit cups and fresh fruit and parfaits and put salads on the menu. I did it all cold turkey. Just one shot all at the same time. So as for my vending machines, like I said, it's going a little slower. I would love to procure grant money and get a human healthy vending machine and have 100% healthy vending in at least one of my vending machines. That has not happened yet. But as for all of my other choices yet, it was just one single implementation.
Thank you. A couple of other comments have come in about healthy product lists. There's the A list out of the John Stalker Institute from Framingham State University in Massachusetts. They have a really great list of products that could be sold in vending machines or concession stands. And then the Alliance for a Healthier Generation also has a list of products that meet the Smart Snack standards. So those are the nutrition standards that are used in public or in any school that participates in the National School Lunch Program. And someone asked if we could share the executive order from Tennessee, and we can definitely share that in the follow-up email.
I believe actually it's online.
It should be, and also the guidelines that were developed should be online as well. And I'm sure that Katie can put her hand on that, and I know Julie can.
Great. So another question that we've received is for Pinky. So Pinky, this is about human healthy vending. And somebody asked, do you see any issues with transitioning into using a new vending company so that, you know, they're newer in the vending world? Do you see any issues arising from utilizing them?
I would say the only one is distribution. Like I said, it varies wildly in geographic locations. If you're close to California, you can get everything, and their products are wonderful. They have a small product line that they create themselves, and they have 1,200 products that they, you know, can distribute. But obviously, the further away you are, the less likely you are to be able to get that stuff. And so I would say that that's the only issue. But they're a very dynamic and very enthusiastic company, and they're very willing to work with us. And I love that about them. They're very excited, and they really are overwhelmed and over the moon to be even able to break into this market. So I think that they will do everything humanly possible, pardon the pun, to help us. And that is the only real issue that I see.
And then another question that was sent in that could be answered by either Pinky or Rosalind. Have you heard of any blind vendors that are working with distributors who supply snack foods for public schools?
I have not.
Foods do need to meet the standards.
I have not. No, I would like to get in touch with those distributors myself, but I have not heard of any.
And somebody asked what the name of the company that Pinky was just referencing, and that's Human Healthy Vending out of California.
Right.
So another question that came in for Rosalind is, could you talk more about the state licensing agency or other agents? Could you talk more about how state licensing agencies or another agency could provide more help on procurement? Do you have any specific ideas?
I think that, first of all, it's complex because so many different states do things so many different ways. But
Right.
just conceptually, General Services is what we call our organization that provides all the needs of the physical buildings. And so within that organization, they have the ability to control, let's say, if there were going to be a warehouse, they would be the ones who provided it, you know, that they made that happen, that there would be a building that would have it. And then they are the ones who really have the systems in place to be able to deal with renting and buying and all those kinds of contracts. So it would have to be through an agency that handled the physical buildings for your state, and then it would go through a number of attorneys who are assigned to those kinds of contracts. As we all know, nothing in state government is easy, and I think you would have to figure it out. Clearly, in Tennessee, we have not figured that out yet. We know that each of our vendors does sign a permit with General Services to allow them to have their machine in their building. But that is the extent of the relationship. And when we first began this, you know, we really couldn't even track down who was the manager in each building. So that whole area is something that I think needs to be developed so that we know more about it. And I'm embarrassed we know so little about it. It certainly is the area where we would like to learn more, because I think we can help our vendors more. But it would, again, have to be in conjunction with the Department of Human Services, who provides the training and purchases the machines. So it is a complex interaction that does, you know, it's very hard for state governments to work outside your silo. And that's why I keep coming back to this team effort. It's kind of a broken record, but it's just so critical to being able to move anything forward.
Well, thank you. Well, we only have a couple of minutes left. I did want to also share that the Washington Department of Health has said that they would be happy to share their executive order for theirs is for vending, cafeterias, concessions, and meetings. So we can share that with the follow-up email as well. I also wanted to mention that our next call that we're going to have is going to be July 23rd from 3 to 4 Eastern. Julie and I were talking about a possible next topic being implementation challenges. But if folks have other ideas of things that they think we should talk about first, or other issues that are more pressing, then definitely either send those ideas to me, or you could chat them to me really quickly in this webinar. So just to go back to our great speakers today, does anybody have a final comment that they want to make to everyone?
This is Rosalind, and I think that my parting comment really is that the relationship, a trusting relationship, is critical to success.
I would definitely say amen to that.
Great. And Julie, do you have any final words?
No, I think that makes sense. You know, I mean, as a lawyer, I focus a lot on the law stuff, but I think in this area, really, it's about the people, and it's about the relationships. And that's why I'm really thankful that Rosalind and Peggy could join today and share their wisdom and insights, because I think it's been so helpful. So thanks, you guys.
Awesome.
Great.
My
well,
pleasure.
thank you
for including us.
Oh, you're welcome. And I will send out a follow-up email to everyone with the slides, with a link to the webinar, and with the different resources that were mentioned. If you have additional questions, definitely feel free to reach out to our speakers, or you could send those to me, and I would be happy to reach out to the speakers for you. So thank you, everyone, for being on the webinar today, and to all of our speakers, and we will talk to you in July.
Thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you.